The highest honor awarded by the South Carolina Athletic Trainers Association is the Fred W. Hoover Award of Excellence. This award honors members that have given unselfishly to the association and its membership for many years.
I'm Suji, and today we're going to be speaking with Andy Clawson from the Citadel.
Good morning. I'm Andy Clawson. I'm the Director of Sports Medicine at the Citadel, and I have been here for a while. In fact, I'll be starting my 49th year here at the Citadel in August.
Wow, 49 years.
Yep, here.
How do you feel?
I feel good. I've been here since 5 o'clock this morning, so I guess I better feel good.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so our first question we'll be starting with is, where did you go to school? What is your college degree, and what was your field of study? And how did your career path lead you to South Carolina?
Well, I went to Henderson State College in Arkansas. I have 2 degrees. I have one in biology and one in physical education, because when I was in school, there was no such thing as curriculums, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a little bit different world. You had to kind of put everything together. Then how I got my job here, or worked in South Carolina, a gentleman by the name of Mickey O'Quinn, who was our head of the Department of Physical Education, and he did his thing in off-season conditioning, and whether we like him or not, most likely, he was the father of off-season conditioning. And with that being said, in the late 60s, early 70s is when that started. Clemson had just gone through a coaching cane. Coach Howard had just retired, and Hootie Ingram came in as the head coach of Clemson, and he was initiating this off-season conditioning program. And when Dr. O'Quinn went over to set the program up, he came back and said that Clemson had an assistant trainer's job open. So I jumped all over it, because they'd hired me there at Henderson for a year, and I wanted something bigger and better and to have more exposure. And Fred Hoover had the opening, and I'm not sure I was the best candidate, but I think I just bugged him until he hired me. So that's how I got to Clemson in the early 70s. I was at Clemson the years of 70, 71, 72. And I came to the Citadel July of 1973, and have been here ever since.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And then, so that'll lead us to, what is it like working with that population at the Citadel?
Well, I think they're still college kids, even though it's a different, more structured, more Spartan environment, shall we say. And everybody looks alike. They all wear gray pants with a black stripe and a gray shirt. So whether male, female, or whatever, everybody basically looks alike. But as far as, in this environment, you have to learn how to make this environment work for you, not against you, because I promise you, you're not going to change it yourself drastically. You might make some slow, incremental changes, but to think that someone's going to come in and make sweeping changes, whether they're a head football coach, a head basketball coach, that is not going to happen. So they go to school first, and then we take care of them.
Got it. All right. And then, who influenced you during the early days of your career?
Well, I guess obviously Fred Hoover there at Clemson, who was there for so long. Joe Geek up at Virginia. Herman Bunch at NC State. Most likely were 2 very impactful people on me, and kind of took me under their wing and kind of showed me the ropes. Because I assure you, when I started, I was so green you could have tied me in a knot. So but like I said, those 3 gentlemen were so influential on my progression through the career and everything that I've achieved. Those 3 guys were kind of at the foundation of it.
Right. Awesome. And then, what were the hot topics, if you could recall, in athletic training in the earlier years?
Well, believe it or not, they were the very, very basics. Because sprained ankles, blisters, strained hamstrings. Because you have to realize, in the early 70s, they weren't real sure what an anterior cruciate was.
Wow.
There was if you read the literature, there was a big controversy whether ACL should be reconstructed extra-articular, intra-articular, which obviously it evolved. It was all inter-articular repairs. So back in the day when ACLs happened, everybody just called, well, he's got a trick knee. No, he had an unstable knee, and that's what
Wow.
happened. So that's. But I mean, the very basics were in the beginning, because I mean things have changed drastically in the 50 years that I have been practicing.
Right. So were they just starting to do the surgeries and all that then, or they still weren't?
You really didn't start seeing ACL reconstructions until most likely the 73-ish. Dr. E.K. Wallace here at the Citadel was doing them. He was doing interarticular repair, and believe it or not, back then they would put him in a cast for 6 weeks.
Wow.
So then you think you don't have a congealed joint then after been in cast, and they're not really atrophied. I mean, it was a nightmare when somebody tore their ACL back then on whoever was taking care of them, and not only the patient.
Right. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine.
Well, they were in the hospital for 7 days.
Wow.
I mean,
And that return, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, they returned, but I mean, it was just you had to be very careful when people say the good old days. Some of those good old days weren't that damn good.
Right. All right. And then how did the coaching fraternity view accept athletic trainers during the earlier years? What battles did you have to endure?
Well, you have to realize the whole everything has evolved so much. Also, when I got started, they didn't have all the fluid breaks that you had. That was one of the big hurdles you had to do, is trying to get them to realize the importance of hydration, which, believe it or not, that has truly, it has not changed that much in all these years, other than people are so much more knowledgeable about the importance of hydration, not only on performance, but just even in concussions, the importance of being hydrated. So, but I have always, I guess, been very fortunate. I have never worked for a coach. I've always worked with a coach.
Okay.
And I've had some very good ones. That Bobby Ross was the first coach I worked with here at the Citadel. And I've had, to this point in time, Brett Thompson, who's the gentleman's the head football coach now, that I deal with on a daily basis. Besides all the other coaches, here at the Citadel, we take care of them, they coach them. And there's pretty much of a defined line of what goes on. Now, I think you have to realize the impact that you have on the coaches. I mean, that's their livelihood. So it's important to try to keep the participant on the field of the court as much as you possibly can, because you can impact their livelihood.
So there's never a time that you ever got into like an argument or something heated where you would?
Oh, well, I didn't say that. Heavens, yes. I mean, but that just kind of goes along with it.
Right.
But I had one coach that we did not get along with very well at all, and we had the meeting with the athletic director, and it came out of the athletic director's mouth. He says, "Andy will take care of him. You coach him," and that was the end of it.
Wow.
So, but at the same time, we've always we try to communicate with the coaches as well as we can, my entire staff, and keep them abreast of what is going on with their athletes. But I really never, like I said, had a real issues, other than I had one that I didn't get along with very well. But that's the way it is in anything.
Right.
And I'm here and he's gone.
Well, I guess that's telling us something.
Yeah.
So your biggest thing would be keeping the coaches informed with everything, and then just having the athletic director on your side as well.
You have to have the administrative support.
Right.
And of course, the way it has evolved over the time. I truly don't even work for the athletic department. I work for the health service.
Right.
In fact, we have my whole staff. We have, if the core is moving, we usually have somebody with them. Whether it's in the morning PT, they're having a big training session down at Paris Island coming up here in August, and we have 2 people that'll be going down with them for that function. In fact, they're going down the first part of August to do a site visit, so they know what all is going to be available to them. So, like I said, everything's a team effort. You have to be a part of that team. And I think that's just the way it has evolved here at the Citadel, because the Citadel does place quite a bit of emphasis on the individual and their individual's care.
Got it. All right. And then who were the physicians that were influential in the setup of SCADA that you worked with?
Well, when I there at Clemson, it was Dr. Knight and Dr. Evans. And then there at South Carolina, it was Dr. Lunsford in the beginning, and Dr. Wallace down here at the Citadel. And then there was a Dr. Henderson over in Spartanburg, that were all physicians that were very involved with it in the early years. Obviously, I mean, things have, like I said, things have changed so drastically. Like I said, with the physicians, because think back in those days, the only good meniscus was a gone meniscus. And if you thought that was their attitude, now that'd be malpractice.
Right.
But I mean, but that just shows you how things have changed. But these were physicians that were very early in this state, that were heavily involved in sports medicine, athletic training, athletic medicine, whatever you choose to call it. And they were very generous with their time.
So you kind of work with them together?
That whole group, yes.
Got it. All right, cool. And then who were the individuals involved in setting up the first organized meeting of the athletic trainers in South Carolina?
Well, Fred Hoover is really he's kind of, if you want to say, the father of athletic training in South Carolina, and what has evolved and the way people are involved. Fred was the one that started the state meeting and what that's evolved into. And whether y'all realize it or not, South Carolina has one of the largest state meetings there is in the country.
Wow.
Especially considering you have 1,000 credentialed athletic trainers in the state, and you'll have over 500 of them, over half of your credentialed membership are at that meeting. The South Carolina state meeting is larger than the district meeting is now. Now that has evolved also, because states are more of the center of the credential and really the athletic training business is kind of state run, kind of like it. So that's kind of the way but Fred was very, very instrumental in that. Of course, myself, I was just a youngin' then, but like I said, I was always there, was his sidekick. And then there was Jim Price down in South Carolina. Jay Shoup was over at Wofford. Jay was real young at that time. But Fred and the folks there at South Carolina in the early stages were kind of the centers. And we always have had our meetings in Columbia because it was centrally located.
Oh.
So everybody could come. That's why it's always stayed that way. It's never moved around, because in South Carolina, being a relatively small state, the furthest you have to go is 2 hours to be at a meeting. If you move it to the upstate, that'd be a 4-hour trip. If you moved it down to Charleston, it'd be another 4-hour trip. So Columbia's where we've always had them. And as long as we have anything to do with it, that's where it will always be, because of convenience to the membership.
Right. What were kind of like the topics that you talked about earlier on? Well,
that once again, obviously heat was a very big issue. Soft tissue injuries were big. And of course the knee injuries were always the big. Most likely back in the day, the knee was kind of like what concussions meant. Everybody talks about concussions.
Right.
So, I mean, it's beat to death. But those are most likely the big talk. And people, there's most likely don't really now talk about soft tissue now as much as they really, like I said, you get a big contusion, a myositis, or whatever the heck you want to call it. That can be very limiting. That can be, you get ossification, then it can restrict your motion. And so just a bruise can become a very big thing. So, but those were kind of the hot topics back in the beginning, where now you have all the mental health issues, and you have this issue and everything else, because it's just, society has changed so much.
Right. It's interesting that you say the hydration part too, because we're still learning about it now.
Yes.
So,
but once again, though, if you look at some of the old text to now, it truly has not changed.
yeah.
I mean, what if you sweat, it tastes salty, doesn't it? Yes. And consequently, people forget that water is great, but it has no minerals in it. And so you have to replace those. But I think people just don't realize the impact that dehydration just has on basic living and how comfortable you are living.
Right. All right. And then our next question, how did the idea of pursuing a legislation law act come about and who was involved?
Well, that all started once again back, the conversation started back in the late 70s. And of course, we didn't get the bill didn't pass until 82, 84. And Georgia had a license. And North Carolina was working on theirs. I think they may have got their law just a little bit before ours, maybe a little bit, not much. But that was just kind of the driving force of once again, the athletic trainer being recognized as a healthcare professional. And that's just one more of the recognition. But once again, Fred was the driving force behind that, because you have to realize that once again, I've been doing this a long time, but you have to realize there are a lot more Clemson and South Carolina graduates than there are Citadel graduates.
Right.
And when it comes to the legislatures, obviously Fred had the exposure, and with the Clemson graduates, and then of course Jim Price had his part of it, have the South Carolina constituent with the legislature, etc. But Fred and Jim, myself, oh heavens, Terry Lewis, who was there in South Carolina, is now no longer with us, was heavily involved in the beginning. But Fred, once again, was the driving force. And as we always said, whenever we deal with the legislatures, every legislature has a team, basically where they graduate. If he's a Clemson fan, is he a South Carolina fan? Is he a Citadel fan? The affirmative fan, Waterman. And oftentimes that's the first question you have. Well, how'd you do on Sunday? Or how'd you do on Saturday? They'd be surprised. Before anything else goes, they always want to know, well, how is everybody? What this, that, and the other. So everybody has a team. And that's kind of the way that you kind of have to get your foot in the door before you decide to hit them with this big thing. Because most of the time you just hit them with a big topic. That's the first thing. No. Next. No. So you have to kind of, at least opens the door so you can explain what you're trying to do.
Right. Okay, cool. And then who were the representatives and senators involved with getting the first legislation in place?
Oh, that's been so long ago, and I don't want to. I hate to not the name, because then if you don't name somebody, and there was something like I said, it'd be an issue. But we have very good support once again from and we have had, and we continue to get very good support out of the legislature when we go to them for things. But we don't try to go to the legislature all the time because they get tired of hearing about stuff. But when we go, we usually have pretty good ears to what we're trying to do. But they were always very supportive. And there was one gentleman, I can't remember his name, when we were talking about the credential and things like that, the certification test. And his comment was, he says, whatever the athletic trainer in South Carolina, he's going to be as best credentials as anybody in the country. And that's why the BOC, that still is the BOC is the finite test for credentialing in the athletic trainer in this state to this day.
Got it. And then, so you said you guys followed the Georgia legislature?
They had it before we did, yes.
Okay, so it was was it a long time before that they had it going on that
they all, I think they passed a year or two before we did.
Okay, so we just followed
it took about three legislative sessions to get it through before it was passed.
Okay.
And believe it or not, one of the big, not a proponent, not against us, were the superintendent of schools. And you say, why that? It's because they did not want to be told that every school district had to hire an athletic trainer, because then they would have to pay for it. And everything comes back to money.
You're right.
Or right, wrong, or indifferent. And to this day, there's a lot of high schools that have athletic trainers. But it took a while for that to happen. But it's like anything else. It's a copycat world. I can remember, I'm trying to think, Irmo, Somerville, over one of the Florence schools. They were some of the largest school districts, were the first to have in Spartanburg, were the first schools to have athletic trainers. And then once they had it, well, I want one. I mean, so then it just kind of, it's a trickle down effect. And now there's a lot of what I call high school athletic trainers. And of course, there's a lot of high school athletic trainers that are work with, clinic facilities. Rather, that's who employs them, and they cover the high schools in the afternoons or however the contract is constructed.
Right. All right, and then we're nearing the end here, but what do you see yourself in the future, either with the Citadel or just?
Well, I mean, obviously, I've done it for a long time. I make my decision every January whether I'm going to go one more year. I've had a chance to rest and recuperate a little bit, but I've been very fortunate. I have a wonderful staff that works for me, and my index finger does a lot more work now than what it used to. I want them to get that done and whatever, and they do a wonderful, wonderful job. The folks that work for me. So, I mean, you're only as good as your weakest link, and like I said, the folks that work for me do a great job, and we're all kind of on the same page with the way we approach something. So it works out well. But like I said, at some point in time, somebody else is going to do this, and they should. But like I said, when that's going to happen, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't move as fast as I used to, but I'm here every day. I still enjoy it. Awesome. I enjoy the people I work with. I enjoy the people that I'm around, and I still enjoy the kids. The kids have not changed. Parents have changed.
Yeah. Wow. What do you mean by that?
Well, the helicopter moms and everything like that.
Right.
Live like that. It's just it's kind of sad that they will not let their children not fight something, but work through some of the tribulations that they're going to have to go through, because at some point in time, mom and daddy's not going to be there either to help. You got to be able to handle your own logistical and administrative issues.
Right.
Somebody's not going to be there to do it for you. And the only way you learn how to do it is learn how to deal with people and interact with them so that you can, get what you want done.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. And then our last question, what advice would you give to today's young professionals?
I was just talking to some of my young ones before I started. I think nowadays, you need to decide on what setting you want to work in. Where do you want to work? What do you want to do?
Me, myself?
No, I'm talking about any young person. I mean, some people don't want to be in here at 5 o'clock in the morning like I was today.
Right.
And I'll leave when I get finished. I mean, whether that's during the off season, whether that's 2 o'clock or it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think, first of all, you need to decide, where do you want to work? How do you want to work? But before some people don't. One of my number one assistants does not have any desire to work intercollegiate football. Has no desire, which is fine. She does a tremendous job, but she has no interest in doing that. And because people have to realize how time-consuming primary health care is, and that's what we deliver. People don't get sick. People don't get injured at your convenience. And sometimes it's inconvenient to take care of them. And I think they also have to realize, if you want responsibility, with responsibility comes time commitment. Because I doubt seriously that there's very few of us that walk out from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. I mean, if you are, then you're most likely not making a whole lot of decisions.
Right.
Because of that, just the way it goes, whether you choose to do in any level or any job even. It's just not a very, especially in athletics. I think 40 hours a week is almost, you're naive to think that. That's just kind of would be very unusual in my opinion. So I think, first of all, decide on what you want to do. And even that, it's kind of hard to believe people are specializing now. I mean, I've got one young man that he just really wants to try to work basketball. I've got another one that just left us. He just really wants to work baseball. I mean, that's kind of narrowing yourself down to jobs, because it just takes a while for you to establish yourself.
Yeah.
You got to be surprised how smart people think I am because I got white hair. That's not always the case, I promise you. Well, you know where we are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andy, for your time and speaking with me.
All right, you take care.
Thank you.
You have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.